Okay, so now we are officially starting the week 2 of business communication, which I believe is today is the 29th of November, and it is on a Tuesday. I do appreciate everyone for showing up. We have a pretty full class here, which is awesome. Now, I I sometimes forget how important this class is, and I think one of the things I put in the beginning email, and it was a Jordan Peterson quote, which was, "There isn't anything you can possibly do that makes you more competent in everything you do than to learn how to communicate." So communication is the key, and it goes all the way back. If you want to get really in it, and we're not going to hold a Bible study here, but just to figure out how we communicate, how our words, affect our environment around us. Even back into Genesis 1, they say that the God brought the world into being using the word. He brought order out of chaos just by using the word. And so that shows you how important it is to communicate, and that whatever you do, you can make yourself better at it by communicating, being a more effective communicator. And I think that's really, we're going to have, I think some of you guys are surge techs and some of you guys are accountants. Uh, you'll be a 10 times better surge tech if you're a better communicator, because the prerequisite, you're going to have the skills. You're going to have the accounting skills. You're going to have surge tech skills, or whatever we're going through here. And that's going to be your prerequisite, but it only increases your validity and how valuable you are in what you decide to do as you become a better communicator. And it's not easy. It's pretty hard. And so I was going to start out, like I said, we know I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan, and so there's denying that, but he does a quick speech here, another 5 minutes, if you guys don't mind paying attention to. Let me share my screen here and move stuff around again, because it always makes it difficult on me when I do that. And that'll give me a chance to not have to talk that, but let's just listen to this 5 minutes, what he has to say, and maybe we can get some reactions out of you guys from it.
So, one way of conceptualizing yourself is that you're one speck of dust among 7 billion.
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear that.
And when you conceptualize yourself that way, you might think, well, what difference does it make what I say or do? And that's actually quite convenient for you, because if it doesn't matter what you say or do, then you don't have any responsibility and you can do whatever you want. The price you pay for that is a bit of nihilism, but if you don't have to shoulder any responsibility, that's a small price to pay. That's the underground motivation for nihilism. But the other way of looking at it, and this is actually the accurate way of looking at it, is that you're in a network. You're a node in a network, and so you can do a little bit of arithmetic very rapidly and just figure out how powerful you are. You know 1,000 people. You're going to know more than that over the course of your life, but let's say 1,000 for the sake of argument for now. They know 1,000 people. That means that you're one person away from 1,000,000 people and 2 persons away from 1,000,000,000 people. And you're the center of that network. And now the way networks work is that information propagates in a network manner. So don't underestimate the power of your speech. Now, Western culture is phallogocentric. Let's say it. Okay, so we'll say, yeah, that's just fine. That's exactly what it is. It's predicated on the idea of the logos, that the logos is the sacred element of Western culture. And what does that mean? It means that your capacity for speech is divine. It's the thing that generates order from chaos, and then sometimes turns pathological order into chaos when it has to. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, all right, I'm going to say what I think, stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am. I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. Now, the reason you think that, that's an element of faith. The idea is that nothing brings a better world into being than the stated truth. Now, you might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. So if you're going to stand up for something, stand up for your truth. It'll shape you, because people will respond and object and tell you why you're a fool and a biased moron and why you're ignorant. And then if you listen to them, you'll be just much less like that the next time you say something. And if you do that for 5 years, you'll be so damn tough and articulate and able to communicate and withstand pressure that you won't even recognize yourself. And then you'll be a force to contend with. And you don't get to wait, and it's almost impossible to provide people with enough protection so that they feel safe to speak. Okay, so we'll address that directly. It is not safe to speak, and it never will be. But the thing you got to keep in mind is that it's even less safe not to speak, right? It's a balance of risks. It's like you want to pay the price for being who you are and stating your mode of being in the world, or do you want to pay the price for being a bloody serf, one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that, right? No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you, because of course you've never stood up for yourself. It's like, say what you think carefully, pay attention to your words. It's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. And in the most real sense, if you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. And nothing better could possibly happen to you. There'll be ups and downs, and there'll be pushback, and there'll be controversy and all of that, but it doesn't matter. The truth is what redeems the world from hell, and that's the truth. And we saw plenty of hell over the last 100 years, you know, and we haven't learned a bloody thing from it. It's like, wake up. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie, if that's a start. And you got to understand that's a risk. It's just that people can't talk, they're afraid to talk, or they don't know what to say. And those are real problems. So if you're reasonably articulate, like, start talking and sharpen yourself up. Be afraid, but be afraid of the right thing. And the right thing you should be afraid of is not saying what you say, because that's the same as not being. And here you are, suffering away. You might as well be at the same time. At least then there's something to you.
Okay, so anyway, I always thought that was a pretty good clip, you know, and because once again, we always fear, you know, sounding ignorant, sounding like we don't know what we're talking about. We don't want to put ourselves out there. And what we don't discuss is what he discussed is there's always a price to pay. You know, you're going, and so you got to kind of, you know, pick whatever price you're willing to pay. And is it that honest person going out there and being articulate and stating what they believe they know to be true, or is it, you know, are you in your hidey hole just worried what everybody else thinks about you, and then, you know, you never move forward that way. So I always thought that was a good one. And so any discussion on that? And I always push that back to doing these discussions, which we have our first one this week, which is just go in and do the best you can with them. Okay. State what you believe to be true. Do the research, do the writing, do it carefully. Don't just put anything down on paper that you think might sound good, but do it in a way that, you know, will evoke some sort of response. And it doesn't matter if people agree with you or not all the time, because let's just be honest, no one's going to agree with us. No one, if everyone agrees with you all the time, then there's something wrong. That's a whole nother can of worms, and I can't imagine, you know, because when it seems everybody agrees and are in lockstep, that's when society kind of goes badly. So we want these difference of opinions, but there are right and wrong ways to do them. And so does anyone have any questions on what we did last week? Okay, so also let me back up here on that diagnostic grammar diagnostic we took at the very first assignment. Okay, so if you notice, once you got done with it and you saw how well you did, I went ahead and gave everybody the same grade, right? Everybody got the same grade. That was just, this is what you get for actually doing it. Oh, I gotta rewind. Jessica said something really nice. She said that speaks to me on a deep level. Long history of trauma led me to stay in my hidey hole. I think it wasn't the best term, but for most of her life, being here is actually one of my first steps to learning how to speak and be my truth. Thank you for in that video. It's you just have to put yourself out there, Jessica. And nobody thinks any less of you when you do. I think that's the big misconception is that people, are just so scared of what other people will think of them. And sometimes you just gotta not be worried so much about that because somebody's there's going to be somebody out there who appreciates who you are and what you have to say. And there will hopefully be more of those than the naysayers who don't. And like he said, I mean, one of the things to being a more effective communicator is it helps to read and read a lot. And I know most people don't like to read, but just read. That's one of the most effective ways of doing it. And then if you can, write. Take 10 minutes out of your day every day to just write. And so if you take 10 minutes a day over the next 5 years to write your thoughts down and become more articulate and better polished in that, 10 minutes a day, let's call it an hour a week. That's 360 or 52 hours a year. Over 5 years, it's 260 hours. Next thing you know, you spent 260 hours moving forward into something. You'd be just surprised what 10 minutes a day can help you out, help you do. Looks like we had somebody move in here. Miss Mason, good to see you. Good to see everybody. All right, so let's get to some of the boring stuff as well. Because I do have PowerPoints, which I'm not a big fan of, but this is a class with bookwork, so we should probably delve into it. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, chapter 4, which is preparing a written message. And this is where most of us are going to be at. I mean, yes, we're going to give presentations in person or over Zoom. And Zoom makes it really difficult. Because I usually ask you in the class, if you can turn on your camera, please do, because that just gives me something besides just a blank canvas to bounce off here. I can see facial reactions. I can see, how people nod their head or whatever, because without that constant feedback, it's really hard to talk. Now it's really easy to hide on one end, but it's really hard to speak. So that's part of the communication, is the back and forth. And that's you'll find that. But for most of us, it's going to be in written form. Emails, texts, things of that nature. You may have to get up and give a presentation every once in a while. Oh, Melissa did. Hi, Melissa. And that's the other one. And we'll talk about giving a presentation with face to face or online, where you have to give it verbally like this, because that is a different sort of animal, and we have to kind of become accustomed to that, because it can be. And I've given speeches in front of what we have here, 15 people. I've talked in front of 100 people. I've talked in front of 6,000 people, and I will tell you, it is daunting when you look out in front of at the crowd, and there's just this sea of faces and everybody's focused on you. And every time I've had to do that, there's that split second where I just want to turn around and just run off stage just as fast as I can, and then keep running and not look back. Because it is a lot of people looking at you. So I think everybody goes through that kind of nervousness. So let's talk about the written messages first, though. Okay, so here we want to understand the difference between academic and business writing. Apply techniques for developing effective introductions, sentences, and unified paragraphs. Prepare visually appealing documents that grab the reader's attention and increase comprehension. Identify factors affecting readability and revise messages to improve readability. Revise and proofread a message for content, organization, style, tone, mechanics, format, and layout. And always talk to people: proofread. You always got to go back. I know, gosh, I'm trying to remember who it was talked about writing his first book, and it ended up being, gosh, I can't remember who it was, but it was a great book. It was really well received. My mind's a little foggy these days, but he said it took him years, because he went back through every sentence over and over and over again. And he said each sentence was probably rewritten half a dozen times until it was the way he wanted it and the way it flowed with that paragraph, and then from that paragraph to that page to that chapter into the rest of the book. Now, I'm not saying do that, because that sounds like a whole lot of work if we're just doing some discussions online. But pay attention, go back, look at your sentence structure, see how the tone is. Does it seem grammatically correct? Do the mechanics of your sentences, do they flow from one to the other? Okay, that helps, and you can write and rewrite. And it's not like back in the old days when I was doing research papers back in the 80s. Everything was handwritten, and then you would go to an actual typewriter, or you would pay somebody by the page to type out what you had to turn in, and then you had to type out. I mean, everything was done with so much labor was put into doing an 8-page paper, where now you can have copies of it. You can take stuff out, delete it, move it around, go back to it. I mean, it's just so much easier now that I think everybody should have to do, at least one research paper the old-fashioned way, with a pen, a notebook, and then a typewriter, to realize, that whatever effort you're putting in now is not really as bad as it could be. Stupid whiteout, exactly. Hey, when I we actually had typing class. It wasn't keyboarding, it was typing. And we had 3 6 weeks per semester when I went to high school down in Texas. And she had 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 weeks. First semester was over, 6 weeks, 6 weeks next semester. And there were 6 tables in typing class. And at the very back tables were the oldest typewriters you can imagine, like click, clack, click, clack, click. And as you move forward in the classroom, they got a little bit newer, until the very newest ones we had little bitty LCD screens on them, and they would actually delete the last letter for you. You just had to hit the back button. And so you really liked it when you weren't actually having to do whiteout and you could actually go to the one typewriter and just hit backspace. But that's how they forced us into that thing from, and so you just got stuck in on one of those tables for the first 6 weeks, and you just rotated through the whole thing through the year. Okay, proofread. Okay, mechanics. Okay, rely on active voice. Okay, so when we talk about active voice, the subject of a sentence is the doer of an action, and we talk about passive voice. Subject of a sentence is the receiver of an action. It conceals the doer, emphasizes what was done and who or what it was being done to, and subordinates the unpleasant thought. Now, we all use Grammarly, right? Eraser smudges. I like that one too. Where's it going? If we all use Grammarly, they'll always tell you, it's in passive voice, consider using active voice. I've got the green G on right. And I always said passive voice is hard to get around, guys. And it's not always a negative. Does it fit into whatever you're writing there? So, but yeah, you try to rely on the active voice, but you can't always get there. That's one of the things I struggle with because I'm trying to write something is staying in an active voice. So don't be too hard on yourself there. Okay, important ideas. You got to emphasize important ideas. Pleasant and important ideas should be emphasized. Techniques are sentence structure, repetition, and words that label position and space and format. Now, I always, and repetition is one of those things that you find out as I move to the business world and everything else is repetition is always the best teacher. You do it over and over and over again the same way until it becomes second nature. And it was kind of fun. It was kind of funny. It was a couple of years ago. One of the things and I used to tell my kids this almost on a daily basis, because if anyone has kids, you always hear, "I know, I know, Dad, I know." And my response was always, every single time, "Well, pumpkin, it's not what you know, it's what you do." And she'd stomp out. And then a couple of years ago, I heard my grandson tell my daughter, "I know, Mom." She said, "Aiden, it's not what you know, it's what you do." I peeked around the corner with this big grin on my face. And then she said bad words to me. But I think it's one of those things that got to her, she and she knew it was right. It's never not what you know, it's what you do. Oh, Jessica, I will tell you, it was one of the most enjoyable moments of my life up to then. It was small, but it was very, very enjoyable. But she did say bad words to me. She has a temper. She gets that from her mother. I didn't say that. Requirements for English. Requirements of developing coherent paragraphs. Position a topic sentence appropriately. Your topic sentence identifies the portion of the topic being discussed. Present the central idea, and it presents the essential idea of the paragraph. A deductive paragraph, topic sentence precedes the details. An inductive paragraph, topic sentence follows the details, links ideas to achieve coherence. Now, one of the easiest things, if you remember back in high school, which is tell them what you're going to say it, and then tell them what you said, right? That's how you can break down each subject in those paragraphs. Again, tell them what you're going to say it, and tell them what you said. I know it's old school, but it's really, really, really effective. And if you can master that helps out a lot. It also depends on what kind of writing we're doing here, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Coherence, cohesion. Each sentence is linked to the preceding sentence in some way. Keeps paragraphs unified and varies sentence and paragraph length. Okay, so each sentence is linked to the preceding sentence in some way. Well, that's what makes a coherent paragraph, right? Is you've linked everything you're saying by a sentence, and you're just not jumping around like listening to me in these lectures, right? It's actually coherent. It has a stream of thought, and everything connects and makes that paragraph something that people need to read. And also very sense of paragraph length. That's just kind of a trick, when everything looks like if every sentence in every paragraph looks like a block, that seems a little bit strange too. Never seems to be very readable and understandable. So we have academic writing versus business writing. Okay. On the left side, we have academic writing, right side, business writing. Writing is to be enjoyed by the reader, and academic writing is to be enjoyed by the reader. Style is emphasized. Opposite of that, time is of the essence. Writing should be concise and easy to read. And you're also going to notice here when we talk about it next, because if you're writing in a paper, you can flourish, you can have a little more to say, but when you're writing to convey your point in a business setting, you make your points and you go. Okay. Just like, and I'm one of the worst at it. When I write emails, they sometimes get a little long and drawn out and blah 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 blah. But in reality, when you're working with, like I am, 200 people, and everybody gets inundated with emails from other departments, other instructors, students, everything else, nobody has time to read that. They want the email to open up. They don't want you to be impolite or rude, but they want to open up the email, say what you have to say so they can answer it and move on. Okay. And then the same thing with, and then we move on under academic writing, audience is well educated, literary and or intellectually inclined. So you can write a little differently for somebody in that environment than you will when you're writing emails to your general audience. I always say, I think, or as actually my wife told me, that all the emails she writes, because she's in financial aid, all the emails she writes are at an 8th grade level. Doesn't matter who they're to. Her focus is right on 8th grade level, whether it's to students, faculty, everything else, because you don't know how that email may be disseminated later. Now, when you send it to someone, to an instructor, they may disseminate to their students, okay, or to department head, and they may disseminate that to other people. And so you have to be able to communicate with a general audience. And we know, let's just be honest, not everybody's smart, right? I always have to relearn that lesson over and over again. Is not everybody's dumb. I would never say that, but not everyone is smart. Not everyone has the same education level or the same ability to read and communicate. So when you're putting something out that's going to be generally disseminated, you really want to be careful and make sure everybody can understand it. And so, like I said, when she sends out stuff to instructors, it's not because she thinks the instructors can't understand it, but she knows that they may forward that to their students because it has something to do with financial aid, and she wants every student from freshman level to senior level to be able to read that. And we're talking about kids who just got out of high school to kids who are just about to graduate. So your audience is wide. Under academic writing, as the audience is often English teachers and students, mechanical and grammatical correct is a common concern. So yeah, sentence structure, grammar, punctuation, spelling. I had somebody, I think it was on last class, and I won't point them out because I don't even know if they're in here or not, but they misspelled my last name. And I said, guys, you just proofread a little bit, and plus I think it was a female too, and no woman has never misspelled my last name. So I have no idea how that happened. And I wrote them a little note on it, didn't get anything back. So maybe it was on purpose. In business writing, you have diverse audience. Many are non-native English writers and speakers. Clarity are more important than grammatical incorrectness. I have worked for some companies. We did do some business with people who were not native English speakers, people in India and China, which was one thing. But we also did business with people in Europe who were native English speakers, people from England. And that was different as well. I think it was almost more difficult than communicating with someone from India. Okay, so at academic writing, long paragraphs, long sentences, big words. In business writing, short graphs, short sentences, plain language. Once again, at 8th grade level, quick, concise, to the point, move on. You want them to be able to read that email, get what they need out of it, know you communicate effectively. They will respond. If they have any questions, they'll ask them, and then we move forward. Okay, in academic writing, purpose to inform a stated position, often not sensitive to a broader context. In business writing, purpose to inform, persuade, convey goodwill, and establish or maintain credibility. Okay, in academic writing, formal first and second person pronouns are avoided. And in business writing, tone is personable. First and second person pronouns are common. So all that, let's say, kind of makes sense. It doesn't mean you have to be a robot in it. Just, you always have to have, everybody has their own personality when it's writing. And if you read enough of someone's writing, you'll know without even looking at the heading of the email who wrote it. Okay, or you'll get it right most of the time. By now I can tell one of Bob Panero's emails from anybody else's. I don't even have to look that he sent it to me. I'll just start reading. Oh, that Bob sent that. Okay, suggestions for developing business documents. View things from the audience's perspectives. Revise the documents until all additional ways to improve them are applied. And welcome suggestions for improvement in writing. Let's see, we go here. Okay, bullet list, headings, tables and graphs, lines and borders, relevant images. So these are things that you're going to enhance your documents. Now we do a lot of these, and like I said, and I really don't like PowerPoint presentations like this, but they are an effective way of getting things across. As you can see, we've got bullet lists, we've got headings. Okay, if you need tables and graphs, and you need, some sort of imagery in there, you can always put them in. You can do the same thing here. All right, so let's see here. Figure 4.3 contrasts the readability and appeal of bulky left versus broken right. Okay, I'll leave this up for a few seconds. You can go back and look at it. But let's look at it now. We've got minutes. Okay. You see how it's broken up into smaller bites on the right. It's easier to read. It's just a better email, right? You got this, because what happens, especially in emails, when you have this huge glob of words, people start to skim. They just, when I look this one on the left, I start out, and the next time I know, I'll look, okay, MasterCard 30 days, humanresources.com, whatever, travel card application, click done. On the right, I'm kind of forced into seeing there are 4 separate sections in there, and there are important things I need to read. And so we've separated it out, and we're forcing the reader to actually look at it. So when I get the glob of words, man, I'm already halfway done. You're laughing, Melissa, because when I send out emails, there's globs of words.
I'm laughing because right now that I was looking at the emails, that's exactly what I did. I just saw everything compressed, and I was just like, okay, this is what I need to know. And on the other one, I actually was like, oh, this is what's important.
And that's when you're writing an email like that, you have to take it into consideration, because like I said, in today's world, I don't know where you work at, but where I work out, I don't work out anymore. I work at. Working out is for, people with time and energy. I work at dozens of emails a day, dozens upon dozens. And so you very quickly, I mean, honestly, you could spend hours just through emails if you weren't careful. So you have two wordy makes my eyes stop working. Yep. If I'm sitting there reading, and when my eyes just gloss over, it's kind of like, trying to discuss, what we want for dinner tonight. Just gloss over. Okay, revise style and tone. Eliminate outdated expressions, which I like outdated expressions, so whatever. They say curb your cliches. Don't overuse expressions that cause users to be perceived as unoriginal, unimaginative, lazy, and disrespectful. Okay, that's fair. Eliminate profanity. That's a tough one for me as well. Because see, that's how most teachers start their emails with is what the bleepity bleep 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 were you bleeping thinking? And then we go back and revise it to as per your prior email. Use simple and formal words. And jargon Fred is how we show affection in my house. Actually that's how we show it in my house. That is pretty fun. I think that may be a societal thing as of now, because if I was to ever talk to my mom the way my grown children talk to me, I'd probably still have bruises. So that's one of those things you have to realize when you talk to people up and down the age range, that people my mom's era, they still have a certain way of certain etiquette, a certain way of respect, as opposed to my children and grandchildren. So it is a little different. Okay, jargon it's used when communicating with colleagues in the same field. So, and that's the other thing is when you're writing an email, are you writing specifically to people who are in the same field and who know what you're talking about? And if not, or if you are, is it going to be disseminated to people who don't know the jargon of surgical technologists or accountants or bookkeepers? Okay. What may seem very, very clear to you, to a layman, of someone in a different industry, may make no sense at all. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Communicate concisely. Techniques to produce concise messages, eliminate redundancies. That's word unnecessarily repeating an idea in an accompanying word. Use active voice, which I said that's one of the big struggles. Review the main purpose of writing and identify relevant details. Don't go off the beaten path if you can help it. It says avoid the restating ideas, but once again, I feel like has to be some sort of repetition if you're trying to make a point. Okay, especially if the point's important, you want to revisit that somewhere in that paragraph. So that's one of those things that you really have to be careful of, though. Shorten your sentences and use compound adjectives. Yes, long sentences, and long paragraphs. Once again, we saw that in the other email. It was just words, Well, let me try to pick out what I need to know here in the next 10 or 15 seconds, because that's about 10 seconds is all you have to get my attention, or for me to just doze off on you. Suggestions to project a positive, tactful tone. Your tone conveys the writer's or speaker's attitude toward the message and the receiver. Now, tone is really hard to do in written messages. And to emphasize that fact, if you've ever sent a text message to your mom, your husband, your wife, brother, sister, friend, whatever, you sent a text message and you meant it one way, and when they came back at you, it was not very pleasant because they took it back wrong way. This tone is really hard to convey. And so you have to be careful with your tone, especially in emails. You know, you always text your sister back and go, "No, that's not what I meant. Stop being dumb." But you know, if your boss takes it the wrong way, that could really not be pleasant for you. State ideas using positive language. Avoid using second person when stating negative ideas. Use passive voice to convey negative ideas. Use active voice to promote positive ideas, and use subjunctive sentences. Okay, so subjunctive sentence speak of a wish, necessity, doubt, or condition contrary to the fact. So include a pleasant statement in the same sentence. Everybody always heard this. You always use the sandwich. If you got something negative to say, you start out with something nice, then you say what was negative, and then you end with something nice. So try that. It works. Use euphemism cautiously. And a euphemism is a kind word to substitute for an offending word. I use those often. And then double speak, euphemisms that deliberately mislead, hide, or evade the truth. So you do have to be careful. And then avoid condescending or demeaning expressions, which, once again, that's why we go back and proofread, because we don't always see when we've made a mistake like that. The demeaning or condescending expressions, you know, it's just something we put down on paper. We didn't take the extra 10 seconds to go back and reread it and go, oh, that doesn't sound right. I probably shouldn't hit send on that. Or you hit send and you start getting replies and you go back and look at your email and go, oh, no, not good. Okay, where are we at here? Demeaning expressions, they damage effort to build and protect goodwill. Goodwill arises when a business is worth more than its tangible assets. Use connotative tone cautiously. Then we have denotative meaning, literal meaning of a word that most people assign to it, and a connotative meaning is a literal meaning of a word plus an extra message. And it reveals the speaker's or writer's qualitative judgment. That's a lot of words. And then use specific language appropriately. Guidelines to use bias-free language. Use occupational titles that reflect genuine sensitivity to gender. Avoid referring to men and women in stereotype occupations. Designating an occupation by gender. Using expressions that may be perceived to be gender biased, and racial, ethnic, age, and disability bias. Now, that whole thing under avoid, I'm gonna use another cliche. In this day and age, okay, you have to be really more sensitive than you have to have been in the past. And I think it's become exponentially more apparent over the last few years that you just need to be really careful, because you don't always, it's just tough. It just is. It's tough not to offend someone at all times. So you do your best not to offend someone over something. And usually we're not out to offend. We're just out to make, you know, stand our point, move on. But it would be, you know, like if you're emailing a bunch of nurses and you say you call them all ladies. Well, not all nurses are female, right? So maybe you should avoid that. Just be careful of, you know, of that. I hate to say we have to be extra special careful, extra super special secret squirrel careful, but you do, because offending someone even accidentally can come back and okay, spell check, okay, is always good. Proofread documents, I've said that before. Display the document in print preview mode and edit for format and layout. Okay. Print a draft copy and proofread again in the document is non-routine and complex. Now that's one of the things, and we won't have time for because we talk mostly about emails and stuff, but if you are writing something that's fairly important, printing out a copy and actually reading it on paper is completely different than reading it on a screen. And I find it so difficult, like when I grade your guys' discussions, that remember having to go back and grade stuff with a red pencil and have paper, and I can write notes on it and make suggestions and tell you what I think. When we do it in a digital format, like when you turn in these discussions, I don't really get to do that. It becomes just, there's really no effective and efficient way to do that. So what I do tell people, so if you want to know what I counted off for or why your grade was a certain way, sometimes I'll just go back, and if you specifically ask me, I'll go back and rewrite it the way I would have written it and send it back to you and to give you a comparison, because I don't really have it's kind of just too difficult to take a red pen to something digitally. So don't be afraid to ask, because I have no problem with that. Autumn, you got younger and you're a boy. How'd that happen? And if you're going to print something,
It's my nephew.
Oh, I just teased it.
Your
Hi,
nephew?
buddy.
Yeah, it's my nephew. He lives with me.
It's him,
Good
your
for
nephew,
him.
and I'm your nephew.
No, you're my nephew, silly boy.
And depending on what you're gonna if you're gonna hand these documents out, like if you're gonna send out paper copies of resumes, get good resume paper. So just depends on what you're going to use it for, the quality of paper, and how much money you want to spend. All right, that is it. And guys, I know it's a little early, but I think that is all I have in me for tonight. Although I appreciate it. I will let me stop the recording right quick, which always means it's a official end of class.